Hello, today I'm going to discuss using mnemonic devices in the inclusion classroom. I chose this device because in browsing through the Inclusion Strategies textbook, the very first thing stated in this chapter is a quote from Cavell and Fornes saying, "Mnemonic strategies are the single most powerful inclusion strategy." I also found in my own learning that mnemonic devices have been extremely helpful in both memorization and retention, but the strategies I've used for many years just scratch the surface of the potential of mnemonic devices. We've all heard the phrase, "everyone learns differently," and it is true, but there are basic strategies that can be used for all learners. As stated in our textbook, Those Who Can Teach, you should approach instruction for children with disabilities just as you would for other students in the classroom. Expect diversity, anticipate a range of abilities, and look for the particular strengths and learning profiles of each student. But in order for us to achieve a higher order of thinking, which will include reasoning and problem solving, many facts must have to be memorized. Before we can put knowledge to use, we must have a knowledge base that is easily accessible, a database for our brain to access. Some learners are able to get those facts into their brain with traditional learning techniques, like reading, listening to lectures, and note-taking. Most of us utilize all three of these traditional methods when learning new material. However, using mnemonic devices is often necessary for some learners to retain facts. Mnemonic devices have proven to be very effective in learning for both kids with exceptional learning needs as well as for average and advanced students. In one small study cited in our textbook, a special education teacher took 8 of her students with learning disabilities and for 6 weeks varied their instruction every week between traditional methods and mnemonic methods of memorization on SAT vocabulary words. In testing each week, the mean scores varied drastically. This shows the potential of mnemonic instruction and the large benefits it can provide to students. So what are mnemonic devices? Inclusion Strategies talks about 2 specific mnemonic devices. One of these is using keywords with narrative chains. You may be familiar with the memorization strategy of using acronyms to learn small groups, like Roy G. Biv to remember the colors of the rainbow. Keywords with narrative chains is similar to this, but instead of acronyms, it uses part of a word or slightly changing a word to recall an image that will help in remembering the original word. An example would be remembering the fact that Vladimir Putin introduced a flat tax rate during his administration. Vlad sounds like flat, and he put in the flat tax. Adding a narrative chain to the keywords adds another layer of memorization and recall. More in-depth facts can be memorized in this way. This is an exciting and effective strategy. Kids can come up with their own fun, imaginative stories to help them remember some often not-so-fun facts. Essentially, the narrative chain is putting together several keywords to make a story. Pictures and drawings can be used to help illustrate. Using words that sound like or rhyme with the words, and using parts of the words and splitting them up also works. A few reasons the textbook gives of why the keyword mnemonic strategy works are: 1. Memory is enhanced with both auditory and visual stimulus because a student elaborates on the material, which makes it meaningful. 2. It's fun. Motivation is increased because the learning is made into a game. And 3. Attention is increased when the motivation is elevated. Here's something geology students have to memorize and keep in their memory in order to further their studies: the Mohs hardness scale. This is a list of 10 minerals to use in identification. This list has a specific order, so a narrative helps to keep each mineral in its correct order on the scale. Let's see if we can come up with a good way to remember the Mohs hardness scale. The tall man and Gypsy traveled from California to Florida. Because of their large appetite, the man lost a tooth and had to go to the orthodontist with his felled tooth. He paid him a quarter for the work. To pass the time, the gypsy sat on the corner drumming. The man asked her to marry him and gave her a diamond. Silly stories like this can work as long as the learner finds a connection through the narrative. It doesn't have to be fancy or an elaborate story, just something that makes sense so they can remember the flow. Here we have tall being talc, gypsy for gypsum, We use California for calcite and Florida for fluorite. The combination of two states in a row is also helpful for memorization. For appetite, we use appetite, spelled differently. For orthoclast feldspar, we use orthodontist and feld together. For quartz, we use quarter. For topaz, to pass. For corundum, corner, drumming. And diamond, we can use the word diamond. Musical mnemonics isn't any more complicated than the title suggests. It is using music to help memorize facts or long lists of items. Using familiar tunes rather than making up new ones seems to work the best. In one study with adults with MS, researchers Thout, Peterson, and McIntosh found that patients demonstrated superior learning and memory in the musical mnemonic condition and produced significant power increase in low alpha brainwaves. The researchers posited that musical mnemonics may access compensatory pathways that strengthen learning and memory. People of all ages and learning abilities can utilize musical mnemonics. It isn't necessarily always useful in any learning situation, so it is important for educators to help students understand when and how to apply musical mnemonics. In the next slide, you will see a wonderful example of when and how to apply this technique.
When I was small, I studied U.S. geography. My teacher said, would you stand up and list the states for me? My knees began a-knocking, my words fell out all wrong. Then suddenly, I burst out with a silly little song. Alabama and Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, and Connecticut, and more, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, and Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, still 35 to go, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, and Goodyear, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, and Montana, Nebraska 27, number 20 is Nevada. Ooh, next New Hampshire and New Jersey, and we're down in Mexico, next to North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, and there's Utah, Vermont, Missouri, Virginia, and there's Washington and West Virginia too. Go to Wisconsin, be the last one on earth, the 49. No, Wyoming is the last one in the 50 states that rhyme. No, Wyoming is the last one in the 50 states that rhyme. Yeah!
We have seen how wordplay, stories, and music can be useful tools in memorizing basic facts and information. This information helps lead to higher order learning, and these tools can be used by all learners. It is the educator's job to teach these techniques to students and help them apply them in their learning. Using mnemonics can be fun, so be creative and have fun. The more enjoyable it is for you, the more fun your students will have, and the better they will learn. Works cited.